Hi, this is Dan Gilmore of Supply Chain Digest and the Supply Chain Television Channel. Thanks so much for joining us for this and another of our ongoing series of supply chain thought leadership discussions, today around the topics of visibility and supply chain performance management. I'm very pleased to be joined here today by Krishnan Parasuraman of Infosys Technologies. He's a lead architect and principal there. Krishnan, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Dan. Nice to be here.
Okay. This topic of visibility and performance management, it's been hot. It's been hot for a while, but it seems like it is just accelerating. Today, I'm recently back from the CSCMP conference. Certainly, this was a key theme that was articulated around the conference, many of the sessions, et cetera. We've had this topic for a while, but again, it seems to just be even more important today than ever. What do you think is driving that?
So, Dan, there are a few different factors which are driving this. Obviously, shortening product life cycle is a key factor. We are seeing that organizations are actually crunching the time between right from innovation and ideation to product launch. You can see the trends in consumer electronics, especially with iPods and iPhones coming out every few months. And this is now, we're seeing this across the board, even in auto and discrete manufacturing type industries. The number of items in BOMs is increased. In process industries, we're seeing that formulations are getting more complex. Companies are doing some very neat things with bundling services with products and so on and so forth. And a lot of this is actually being driven by consumers and consumer demand, right? And organizations now are being to establish a better relationship with customers. They're able to tap into voice of customers directly, and customers are driving that innovation. And what this means is all of this is starting to impact the supply chain, right? The supply chain now has to be more agile, it has to be more responsive, it has to be more dynamic, right? And it has to function effectively to meet those shrinking product life cycles and consumer expectations.
Yeah, one of the things, I agree with you 100%, and one of the things I like to talk about is, everyone talks about shortened product life cycles. You also have to think about shortened gross margin cycles, sure. Because as this happens, the amount of time that you have to actually make the maximum dollars when you have the innovation before the next life cycle occurs, before the offshore competitor knocks you off, it is so important now to capture as much of that potential gross margin as you can in that relatively short time period.
Absolutely, and that's very critical. And we recently ran a survey across about 100 different high-tech manufacturing and discrete manufacturing companies across both US and Europe. And some of the results were very interesting. So about 2/3 of the respondents said that their supply chains are getting very complex, right? They are adding more geographies, they're adding more products, they're adding more suppliers, so it is getting more complex. And then the data that we got, so the impact of this primarily was that there are disruptions in supply chain, right? About 70% of the respondents said that it takes them hours, if not days, to even detect a disruption and then respond to it, right? So that's very significant. The second thing is, for an average supply chain professional spends at least 25% of his or her time just on data-related activities, which is collection of data, cleansing, formatting it, and then reporting on it and stuff like that, right? So that's significant. And then about 90% of the respondents said that they still use very primitive tools for collaboration, primarily email, to interact with their partners and within the organization.
Yeah, very interesting. If you take a look, that's sort of the symptoms, maybe, I guess, if you'd say. What in the end are companies, do you think, really trying to solve, or what are the real pain points that they need to take action?
Okay, so Dan, there are really three different things that customers are really trying to achieve at this point: risk management, demand management, and supply chain performance management. In terms of risk, some of the key global issues that organizations are looking at are around product quality, supply chain disruption, and commodity price volatility, right? So those are some of the key issues they want to have visibility into. They want to understand a little bit better about supplier performance. Right. They want to understand a little bit better about product quality, and so on and so forth. The second thing is demand management, right? So one of the recent studies that came out showed that it takes organizations 3 times more to sense demand than respond to demand, right? Most organizations are still planning their operations based on market orders, which is really far from what the reality is, right? So the ability to detect these changing demand patterns and very quickly react to that, right? So you need to have that level of visibility across your channels. And the third thing is just end-to-end supply chain performance, right? I want to look at my spend across both direct and indirect, across categories, across suppliers. You want to be looking at your inventory positions across different channels. You want to be looking at your cost to serve, customer satisfaction. So these are all key metrics that organizations want to manage effectively to run their supply chain to be more dynamic, to be more agile in this really global, complex supply chain.
Yeah, and obviously now with the global economy we've had and those dynamics you just talked about, on steroids, really. I think that's a very good summary of the issues and what people are trying to accomplish. yet it's not just as easy as pushing a button or bringing in a software package or something to solve them. What are the real barriers to getting solutions, process and technology to address these challenges?
Sure. So there are a couple of the big challenges today are organizations either have invested in some point solutions, right? So you may have an inventory optimization solution, or you may have your traditional ERP or CRM. And what these tend to do is they tend to silo the information, right? So you have information in the organization or across your supply chain, but they're all in different pockets, right? So they're not connected, and you're not able to get that end-to-end view, right? So that is one big challenge. So traditionally, the two models, that were in front of organizations are, go and put this BI solution in place, right? And BI tools exist, but it's not solving the problem because it's too expensive and it's very analytically focused.
BI, business intelligence.
Business intelligence, right?
Yeah.
The second option is, take your ERP or process tool, whichever you're using, and bring everything into it. And that's not necessarily practical, right? So those are the two big barriers that we see that organizations are not necessarily able to overcome to address these issues.
Okay, so it sounds like maybe there's a third way, or so what, do you have? Can you summarize what approach companies maybe might want to think about taking to address these issues?
Absolutely. So the most leading companies which are trying to put together a supply chain visibility program, they're looking at it in a different way. They're trying to say, okay, we need to measure our metrics, our key performance, and there's a mechanism to do that. We need to be able to constantly monitor and capture these data from these different event sources, pull this in accurately, and then the whole discipline around managing your data, right? So managing the quality, managing the governance around that. So measuring your information, monitoring your metrics, and managing your data. I think these are the key principles, and there are some low-cost, effective ways of doing this very, very, very well.
Well, you got me intrigued on that one. We're out of time today, but I think we'll pick this back up with a follow-up discussion. Krishnan, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Dan.